All right. Are you ready, Jason?
Oh yeah, no
And do I
worries.
say your name Cher or Sheer?
Scherer,
Scherer?
Scherer. Yeah, that's
Jason.
okay. Nobody gets it right. And I've even told my kids. I said, it's probably it's kind of funny because people, when we were kids, people would make fun of your name, right? And I told them, I said, dude, you're lucky because if you were just, a normal name, it'd be hard for people to remember you. But because it's like, there's been jokes and people like how, your name's always that people like pay attention to it. So you'll be remembered for it, So I've tried to turn it around for them if they'll remember it. But normally I say Scherer, like Dave Cole, probably 5 or 6 years ago. Actually, it wasn't. It was the Filarski brothers that are really good friends of ours, and they did a little video, and they said it was like one of those animated videos, and it was hilarious. The whole video was hilarious because it was like the theme was like some guys like, hey, I'm gonna go to the Hammers this year, and they're like, oh, that's great. And he said, you know, he's trying to tell his girlfriend or wife this, and she's like, okay, but your rig's not even finished. He's like, oh, I know, we're gonna finish it on the lake bed, and I'm gonna go meet a bunch of my friends out there. And she's like, have you ever met any of these friends? She's like, no, they're all on Pirate 4x4. I know them from there. And she's like, so you don't even know their real names? You just know their pirate user handle? And he's like, well, yeah, and he's like, but we're gonna get into the race through the last chance qualifier and race, and it goes on and on and on, and then he goes, yeah. She goes, you think you're gonna be as fast as Scherer? And it just keeps going, and so then it became a nickname, and so then Dave would introduce me at the drivers' meeting and be like, Jason Scherer, and it hasn't ended. So it's been like 5 or 6 years, and everybody remembers the name now because of it. But I think it's great. I love it. Like if I had you know, hadn't had that, people wouldn't remember it. So I don't care how you say it, but yeah, Scherer is the right way. But I get a lot of sheer, and it doesn't bother me at all. It's like whatever. So
All right. Well,
um,
welcome to the Hammer Factor Hot Seat. We have on this episode three-time King of the Hammers champion, three-time Ultra 4 national champion, and the only racer to ever repeat at the King of the Hammers, Jason Scherer.
morning, guys. How you doing?
Good, man. Welcome to the show. So we've had a lot of different kinds of professionals on this sport. We've had mountain biking professionals, running professionals, kayakers, coaches, doctors, but you're the first person in the motorsports world that's come on this show. So I'm super excited to talk about some cars and racing and something maybe a little off topic here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on the show, and look forward to kind of maybe letting people know a little bit more about Ultra Four racing and what King of the Hammers is all about.
Sick. So before we get into it, can you share something with our audience that most people probably don't know about you?
Most people probably wouldn't expect that an off-road racer would be a plant-based vegan.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how did you get into that?
Um, well, I've been into CrossFit for the past 10 years. And believe it or not, I've started off going full paleo, which was actually a lot of meat. And I think one of the first Instagram following things I had was like I love bacon or something like for the hashtag, right? So like I didn't start off being plant-based or having any desire for it. But, when my wife talked me into going and getting a physical when I turned 40, and I hadn't been to the doctor in like 10 years. I go to the orthopedic all the time because I'm broken up and things need replacing and, stuff. But I never went to like the regular doctor. And so she's like, you should really go to the doctor and get a physical and all this. So I go in there thinking I'm perfectly healthy, and I had cholesterol through the roof and all this stuff. And who knows, like really science wise, like what the deal was. But I said, okay, let me try to address that. Of course, the doctors wanted to give you statins and say you're going to be on these drugs for the rest of your life and all that. And I was like, no, I'm not. So I tried to go plant-based. 3.5 months into it, I got my blood work done again, and I was perfectly good. Like numbers had dropped down to, below what they would even consider somebody who has a high risk. So I said, okay, this works for me. I've kept on it. And, the side effect was that I felt good. You can pretty much eat as much plant-based food as you can possibly consume and keep your weight good. So it's been good for racing. I feel like I have more energy. And so that's been good for working out and trying to stay in shape for this stuff. Ironically, like I don't know if any of these worlds collide, but I started eating cleaner on that side of it, and then we went on and had like a great run the last 2 years in racing. So I like to think they're related, or at least I'm superstitious enough to believe I shouldn't try changing it.
Well, there's all kinds of research out there that talks about not only the physical but the mental benefits of a plant-based diet. So there may be something more to that than just coincidence.
Yeah, you never know.
Before racing, let's get back to the beginning. Where are you from? What were you like as a kid? Were you always into racing? Tell us about Jason Scherer before you were the champ.
That's a great question. So I grew up, kind of in a small town. It's not as small as it used to be, but a small town in the East Bay, California. It was, I grew up and it was like 14,000 people, and the towns next to me weren't too big, but now it's, 10 times that, and the towns around us have grown up so much that the Bay Area is like just sort of like Southern California now. I played baseball, but I didn't really love it as a kid. And so I wanted to ride bikes with my buddies. And so I was racing BMX bikes. My parents weren't super into the racing stuff. Like they didn't really like that. They liked the team sports, but they didn't really want to go out to the track and drop us off and, kind of deep out in Sonol to go to the AMA track and all that. So did that with some of my buddies. And, once I got my license, I had to figure out what I wanted to do for a car. And I really wanted a Jeep because my buddy had a Jeep. Ironically, I started playing baseball in high school again. Like I took a few years off and decided I wanted to play high school baseball. And I remember my dad going, "You think you're going to go out and play high school baseball when you didn't play like the last 4 years?" And regular, senior minors and senior majors and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go try, and did really well at it. I loved it, and I had great coaching, and I got super passionate about it. And so, it's kind of hard to talk about. I don't like to brag about, but I got the MVP award at De La Salle High School for baseball and all this stuff, and just really had a good run in baseball. And I think that taught me a lot about the dedication it takes to excel in a sport. I was kind of lucky. I went on to play some college baseball and have a good time with that. And then 2 years into college, my dad called me and said, "Hey, our business I started 2 years ago is growing, and I have a problem with a couple of employees, and they got to leave, and so I need you to come home from school and help me out just for a semester." And so 26 years later, we're still running that business together. And, it's been cool because I've been able to afford in a, good or bad way to go do stuff for fun. Like it was dirt bikes for, the next 4 or 5 years, competitive trials, enduros, things like that. And then when rock crawling competitions started, I had a buddy ask me if I wanted to go help him with, spotting, because I understood how it worked in a trials competition where you had to, score your dabs and everything and go through gates. And he said, "Would you help me? Because I know understand the theory and all that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go. It would be fun." So I went out there and I was hooked instantly. Like I said, okay, this is fun. I've got a Jeep. I want to turn my Jeep into doing this. And then they started having rock crawling competitions all the time, and I was out there competing in the very same Jeep I got when I was 16 years old. I was then, 23 or 24 and competing in that Jeep out on the rock crawling circuit. And, that was a good time. We really had fun with it. It didn't take long until it was full buggies and, kind of higher technology stuff. You say that with like almost the one that I had was pretty trick. It was built by John Nelson and everything, but most of them were pretty low tech. And then, then King of the Hammers came about. So, it was a quick ramp up from being a little kid racing bikes to, wow, you're going to go, through the desert and high speed across all this stuff and try to start racing it. But it was kind of like the perfect storm. It was the trials bike stuff through the rocks, and it was the high speed stuff you always wanted to do in the desert, all into one event. And I was like, wow, this is something I really want to do.
When was your first Hammers?
That's a great one. I was so lucky. My buddy Jeff Mello, who I'm still great friends with today, who was one of the original rock crawling guys. He's won like think you guys got over 100 wins in the different combined stuff between the rock crawling and, all the way back to like the tough truck series and stuff like that. He invited me to go down and ride with him as a co-driver. So I did the 2008 race as a co-driver. I had been in 2007. So you know how you had a spotter in the rock crawling days where they pulled on the rope or whatever? So my spotter was my double step brother, Lance Clifford, however you want a family member him. And my brother married his sister, his wife's sister and stuff. So we get to, I say it like this, technically family, but we get to spend the holidays together. So it's close enough, right?
Right.
He was my spotter, and I would go to, these events with him, and he bought a Jeep Speed, and we started doing Jeep Speed racing also. And then I was his co-driver, so we would kind of switch back and forth. He got in with Pistol Pete to be his co-driver for the Baja 1000. And Lance said, dude, you can buy a seat for $5,000 to sit in Pete's truck on the left side, because Pete had 3 seats in there. And I was like, really? And it seemed like a little bit of a crazy thing to spend $5,000 to go ride along in a race, but it turned out to be like a life-changing event. I spent $5,000 to go start first in trophy truck in the 40th Baja 1000. And I was on the left, Pete was in the middle, and Lance was on the right. And Lance did the GPS work, I did the gauges, and I got to experience what a trophy truck can do in Baja with, a talented group of guys that drove that truck. And we came in 4th overall, or at least 4th in class. And, it was like, okay, this is really what you want to do. But, the budget, even Pete's budget was out of my league, right? I mean, he had a chase truck with a trailer and one other truck, which is about as low budget as you can chase for the Baja 1000. But he had a pre-runner and a trophy truck and spare parts, and that was like, yeah, we never do this.
What kind of numbers are we talking about with that setup?
Back then, that was probably $350,000 worth of equipment rolling around down there, and maybe 10 guys. And now it's probably 3 to 4 times that just to go do the race, the right way. You know what I mean? Not per race, but like the equipment costs have gone up to that. I mean, I think these new Mason trucks are over, they're starting to hit the $1 million mark on some of the stuff. So, the trucks are more expensive. To not have full chase crews stationed at every pit with all your stuff wouldn't really be a race strategy anymore. And, we rolled around with the fuel drums on the trailer and tried to get the fuel in the truck and shit. It was like, it was crazy that you could actually, put together a race effort that way and still finish that well. But it was badass. Like, it was a super good experience, and I saw what you could do. And then I went and hit King of the Hammers. It was really 4 months later, right? So you have November 2007's Baja 1000, December, January, and then February is King of the Hammers. So here I am, 4 months later, jumping in the passenger seat of Jeff Mellow's Jeep, which wouldn't go 75 miles an hour because you couldn't keep it straight long enough to go that fast. I mean, the speedometer might have said that, but the tires weren't pointed in that direction long enough to be able to hit the speed over ground. So we were cruising along probably about 60, and then we hit the MDR course, and we were probably going 40, and it was like a bucking Bronco all the way across the desert. It was like almost ridiculous, right? But we finished it, and I looked over, and I was like, this is it. This is like everything I've wanted to do in one thing. So I turned around, I finished that event, and I sold my rock crawler, which was really hard to do because I really loved it. It was called Tiny, and I had bought it from John Nelson and his mom, and they had built such an awesome car at that time, and it was like the lightest weight. It was a Volkswagen powered rock crawler, but it was really, everything about it was just perfection for what it took to do the rock crawling stuff. And I sold it to somebody so I could afford to go build a King of the Hammers car. I wanted it to be a twist at first where I could do both the like middle class of the rock crawling stuff and King of the Hammers. But after going to one event with a LS7 powered, motor and a rock crawler, I was like, all right, you can't competitively rock crawl something with this much horsepower. And so I just decided to say screw it and go for one thing. So I went for King of the Hammers, and that was, that all happened in that same year, 2008. Mike Schaefer helped me. Jesse Haynes helped me. We built, we had to change the roof line after we built the car because my co-driver, Jason Berger, was too tall to fit in it. So we had to recage it. We redid the rear suspension based on the guy that bought a Class 7 truck. Bill Coons had a Class 7 truck, the guy that started Torchmate, the plasma cutter company. And we looked at the rear suspension, and I looked at mine, and I was like, dude, we just need to cut my car off in the back and redo this. We built this car, and we changed it like 2 or 3 times before the race in 2009. It was like everything was a rush. We couldn't get parts fast enough. I mean, it was like the full rush of all the stuff to try to get it done. And yet, when we went to the Hammers 10 times and practiced before the race, and we had it pretty dialed in. We had a couple of catastrophes like 2 weeks before the race. Like literally, I broke an upper link mount 2 weeks before the race and wrapped the axle housing around in a circle. All the shock mounts, all the hydraulic lines, all the drive lines, everything were just destroyed. And I wasn't quite sure we were going to be able to pull it off and get it all back together. But we did, and we went out there and we won the race. Yeah, the irony of the whole thing was we were leading the race. We were racing this other dude named Easy Rick Mooneyham, who was, the class of the field in the rocks. And we might have been the class of the field in the desert. And he taught me so much watching him go through the rocks that we kind of picked that up, and we've never really forgotten that lesson, right? And then we got to Sledgehammer, which is the hardest obstacle really on the climb, and we rolled over. And we were leading the race, and we rolled over, and the fans went to try to push the car back over. And I said, wait, I don't think we can get outside assistance. I don't think the fans are allowed to roll the car back over. So I actually heard somebody come in my driver's window and say, call race ops and ask them if the fans can push you back over. Because we were going to get out and start winching it over, which would have taken forever. And I get on race ops, and I remember Jeff Knoll coming back on and saying, hey, you can roll the car back over. And the speaker on the radio played outside. I didn't realize that. I thought it was only in the headsets. And the car just instantly stood up. And when I looked over to see who had made me say all that, it was Pistol Pete. He was standing there.
Oh,
and he basically saved our race. He got us that win. Like, we wouldn't have won if we had gotten out of the car to winch it back over. So we went on to win that thing. Second gear, I was the only gear left in the transmission. We drove across that thing at like 80 something miles an hour on the rev limiter, just clipping the rev limiter for the last 30 miles of the race, trying to get back to the finish line, because on adjusted time, that Easy Rick started 99th, like the last guy to start, basically. I guess the 100th guy would have been the last guy to start, but 99th place, and he was in second, but not on adjusted time. So we had to go give it everything we had to make as big a gap as we could in the last section. And, that was when I was hooked. Like, I knew that when the pressure was on and we had to drive that Fissure Mountain Trail, like something else came out of me. Like, it wasn't just me driving at my race pace that we were doing. It was like we could step it up and kind of go to the next level when we were really under the gun. And there was a reason to go that hard. And then I was like, okay, this is badass. Like, that was the full adrenaline rush. That was that crazy feeling you get when it's like, everything's on the line. I think the kayakers get that when they drop off at something crazy and they go, the conditions don't go like, simply, and all of a sudden you have that full adrenaline rush, like it's all or nothing right now. And you got that in that section of that race course where it was, 20, 30 miles of everything you got. And it's probably the most badass feeling in the world, because really the rest of the time you're an idiot if you drive like that, right? You can't, because then you break your car and everyone says, well, you drove too hard. Mm-hmm. But if second place doesn't pay anything, and there's only one King of the Hammers, and you got a chance to go win it with 20 miles left to go, and you put everything on the line, I think it really shows, like, that's the one time in life you get to go for it. It's take the reins off and go for it. So it was bitching.
Let me back up here a second. So a lot of people know what the Baja 1000 is. I'm sure that it's had tons of media coverage over the years. I mean, I can remember growing up, watching that race and seeing the trophy trucks out there. But what is King of the Hammers? To someone who doesn't know about it, describe it. How would you describe it?
So, first of all, it's physically located in Southern California near 29 Palms Military Base. 29 Palms has been called the most inhospitable terrain in California, or maybe in the U.S. It reminds people of Afghanistan. So, if you like 29 Palms, you like Afghanistan. It's terrible, right? It's hot, it's cold, it's windy. There's nobody that lives there because it's an awful place to live. And the conditions suck. But that harshness and brutality is made for a really beautiful raw desert. It's got rock trails that were cut in by rock crawlers in the 90s and through to today, right? They continue to build more rock trails. All they are is just canyons of gnarly rocks that have fallen off of the ledges of the canyons, and you're driving that base of these big boulders. There's trails like Sledgehammer where we've been running those trails for 15, 20 years. They look identical to the day that the first guy walked through there because the rocks are so big that the vehicles can't move them out of the way. You just drive up on them, and they're just massive. And the reason I say that is the terrain is so rough and so gnarly and so abrasive in every way that what they've decided to do was something we used to say, let's go run Sledgehammer, and that would be our day of going down to the Hammers. Now the race, as it started off, it was some of the trails and a desert loop back. Then it was all of the trails and a desert loop back. Now it's a huge desert loop followed by all of the trails twice in one day to make it like kind of, I guess from the outside, if you'd never heard of it and they said, hey, the race is 2 times through all the rocks and a loop of desert, you'd say, okay, that's what it is. But when you started off saying it was so hard that there was days we couldn't make it all the way up Jack, we would turn around, we would do this like on one of the trails. And now we just run it twice in a day. It's like, it's gone to the point where it's kind of ridiculous how gnarly it really is. And I think that the best way to explain it is that it's the roughest race course of all the desert races that I've ever seen, because sans maybe some places that get blown out, like in sections of San Felipe and stuff like that. It's rough everywhere. It's not an easy graded road or set of whoops that you just stand on it and go through. It's technical everywhere. It's a lower speed ability for desert racing because you can't get up to the high speed numbers for high mileage stuff. And so it's very, very technical, and it's very important that you see every little obstacle on the trail, because there's little rocks that stick out of bushes and stuff that'll take your tires out and cut you, ruin your race basically if you don't stay on your game. So the attention span thing of racing King of the Hammers is the highest level of any of the races I've ever done. You don't get a break, you don't get a caution flag, you don't get a timeout. There isn't a high speed section or a paved section like there is in the Baja 1000 where you'll have to connect a couple of roads by a 60-mile-an-hour pavement section for 20 miles where you take a deep breath. There's no deep breaths, there's no rest, and there's no chance to catch your breath. So last year and this year, we ran about the same times, about 6.5 hours. And I've told everybody it's a 6.5 hour full-on sprint. So that's what makes it so hard.
I know that, the terrain is savage. As someone who's been there a few times on the media crew, the only way that I can get to my spot is by helicopter. So that right there is saying something. Unless I was in the car like you were driving, there was no way to get me to the spots without a helicopter. So
No, the UTVs will get you to the rock trails, but once you're in the rock trails, you wouldn't be able to. The guys are racing the UTVs and they think they're doing the rock trails, but they're going down them all.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's gnarly. It's good stuff.
I don't want to get too in the weeds here as far as talking about tires, motors, chassis, and whatever, but this year at Hammers, there was a trophy truck division that raced on, and they didn't do all of the trails. They didn't hardly do any of the canyon trails. Right. They definitely had an easier route. But what's your thoughts on that of bringing those kind of cars into the event as someone who's done both?
Well, it's cool. I mean, I think, the only differential between what they did and what, say, like King of the Motos have done in the years past is that King of the Motos did run the rock trails, and that was a deal where you got to see all the top, and maybe not all of the top, because I know it was a conflicting schedule thing. It was off season for some guys, so you didn't get the Graham Jarvises and stuff, but you did get, Cody Webb and all the really good American sensations out there to see how they could do. Colton, the depth of the field was great, but it wasn't necessarily all the hard enduro national guys. The trophy truck guys got the other way around. It was the top 25 of the best trophy truck drivers in the world. I think there might be 60 trophy trucks or something that might race, in the thousand this year or whatever. Still, the top 25 of those guys was at the Hammers. And so I think they got a real shake of who was there and who was the best at the conditions. I don't know that it's the litmus test of how good you are at the Hammers. I think it's just another desert race. It's more technical, but the fact that they can't do a single rock trail doesn't, I mean, it's just a cool event, but it's so cool because we were using that day as contingency because that's when our class had an opportunity for that. So all they did is move, the basically the everyman challenge in 45, 4,800 classes, which are kind of like our feeder class to the 4,800. Although they're growing so fast, I think people actually like living in that class because the cars are a little more affordable. So that class is really doing well. But they just moved that race to Wednesday, which, I mean, honestly, it didn't change anything for anybody. And then they let the trophy trucks run on Thursday, and it drew fans into the Hammertown. Not that we needed more of them because there's so many freaking people there, but it drew, which is, it's good for the industry though, right? And it got a kind of, I don't want to say this in a negative way because it kind of comes out that way, but the desert guys didn't like the rock guys for some reason. I think they thought we were just, low tech, maybe too redneck for them, and they were too good at fabrication and all this stuff. And, there was always like a rub there, like, oh, well, it might work for King of the Hammers, but that's not going to work in Baja. And I always remembered that, like, we'd go down there in the Jeep Speeds, and it was really no different than anything else. But they didn't cross over well. I think when they came down and saw our event, I don't want to say this and this is the part that sounds negative. The Baja 1000 has millions of fans, but they're pretty much there because they live there and they want to come out and see the event. The people who go to the Hammers are hardcore. You have to have an RV to stay in. You can't tent camp at the Hammers because the wind will be 80 miles an hour one night and it's, 20 degrees out. And the next day it's, that day it's going to be 80 degrees out and you're sunburned when you go to bed in the freezing cold. I mean, it's gnarly. People hate it, right? But in order to get to the Hammers, you have to be a hardcore fan. I think for the trophy truck guys to show up and go, holy crap, there's way more people at this event than there's been at any American trophy truck event at any, stage of our career. We just went to the biggest event we've ever been to, and we weren't the number one show. We were the sideshow for the Ultra 4 guys, and not in a bad way. I mean, they're race paced. I mean, they're faster than us. They're better than us and all that stuff, but they don't do the same thing. So, people went to go watch them, but they also wanted to see the Ultra 4 race. And I don't think that, the worlds are so different anymore about the speeds that we're obtaining, the car builds, right? They're all pretty close. I mean, I look at cars like Paul Worchel's car. That could be, if he was building a trophy truck, his quality of work wouldn't have changed, and vice versa, right? They're at that same level of the Mason trucks and the Geyser trucks now. Some of these top Ultra 4 cars, there's no real difference between them all. And I think that kind of, they saw that. They got to go out there and go, huh. I mean, I saw the expression on some of their faces when they're like, huh, these are actually pretty nice. And I guess it's when they say that, it's obviously when somebody must have told them that it was a bunch of pipe, poop pipe welded together in, square tubes or something. So I don't know, that kind of gives you a little bit of that feel where the two worlds combine. But the trophy trucks, are probably part of the show for a long time to come, I think, because people really like seeing them.
Very cool. Well, I describe when people ask me about hammers who know nothing about car racing, the way I describe it is it's like Burning Man for gearheads. I mean, it is a passionate fan base out there, no doubt. I've got to see a lot of racing. I've been lucky enough to, I raced some motocross and have done a bunch of mountain bike racing. I've filmed a lot of those events, and there's something about the style of the top guys and girls of all of these events that it makes it look easy. So, for instance, in a mountain bike race, the fastest guys aren't always hammering. It just looks like they're floating. When you're in a and as I've watched and sat and videoed and I pretty much filmed every racer out there, I've noticed that your style is completely different than all of the drivers out there. There's not a lot of smoking tires. You're not constantly on the throttle. It's just little bumps here, little bumps there. Can you speak to me how you developed that style? And I don't want you to give away your secrets, but what's your secret sauce? How did you develop that?
I don't really know, and I don't understand it when I watch it on a video that it's different than what everybody else is doing, because it seems so. My videos suck. Like, they always look like I'm going super slow, but then I'll watch like Tom Ways or Nick Nelson or somebody go do the same section, and they're badass. They're just like 3 inches over to the right, kicking a roost all the way around the corner, and I was smooth through the center. And I look at it and I'm like, oh, that sucks. They must have been hauling ass through there. But then there's no difference in speed, or we're in the front or whatever, and you're like, okay, it still doesn't really add up, right? I think I don't like to slide the car as much with the rear, and I try to utilize the four-wheel drive kind of driving style of maybe being, I think the proper term for it would be like a little neater on the way I enter the corner. I might brake a little harder on entry and then drive off a little bit cleaner on the exit, because I'm using the four-wheel drive and I'm not oversteering it quite as much into the corner. But it sure doesn't look nearly as badass. I mean, Shannon Campbell can go into a corner. I don't think he hits the brakes. I think he just turns until it's sliding sideways and he stands on the gas again. And it looks way better. And it's all, the car's all over the place and kicking around. And you're like, wow, Shannon's hauling ass. And I've had it happen to me where they had a race down in Texas 2 years ago. My co-driver, Jason Berger, was with me, and we had something happen to where we had a late start that day, and there was no rush on qualifying. They didn't care when we qualified. They said, hey, look, we got a long day ahead of us. We got like 140 cars to go qualify. Whenever you guys want to, drive down to the qualifying area and go ahead and go. Well, like Lauren Healy, Shannon Campbell, a couple of guys, Waylon Campbell, they all got down there early. And so we were still at our trailer watching the qualifying guys go. And I watched them and said, holy crap, they are hauling ass. I have never seen anybody so wildly crazy as watching Shannon. And then we watched the Gomez's jump the jump a little too hard, and Marcos's front bumper stuck into the ground on the landing, and the thing flipped like 6 times. And I sat there and I looked at Berger and I'm like, oh my God, these guys are freaking crazy. Like, I can't, we're going to get our asses handed to us, right? And we got in the car, and, I think we were like putting tires on and doing stuff like that. Like, and there was no rush. There was no pressure to when to go or whatever. We got our shit together. We went down there. We got our qualifying and, mood on, which is a different mood than race mood. I don't know what it is, but you got to get yourself in that vibe of like, every tenth counts, right? So you're kind of like on your game. You're braking as late as you can. You're on the gas almost with the brakes on, so that you're not giving up anything when you go. It's just like one of those deals where you're all in, and got that feeling. Took off from the line. We went out there, and we had a relatively boring looking run. Like, it was like, okay, whatever, and we get across the line and they're like, yep, that's pole. And I'm like, what? How's this possible? So I don't know what it is about that smooth kind of stay in control, but it seems to work. I just don't know what it is that causes it. But it isn't great for show. I know that that's been a thing that we have kind of like, well, you know, um, I'm way down on power to those guys too on the normal motor. I have a big motor and we run it at the short course races. But it is a pretty mild motor. And I always wonder if there's something to having it track all the power it can down on the ground versus spinning the tires a lot. And I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe that looks a little different. Um, you know, I think it was a little bit more of a roost tire when I was on the Nittos than it was on the BFGs. They're a little bit smoother too, but the trackable power of that is a big difference. But yeah, I don't know what it is. It's funny that you say it because I watch these videos. I want to try to post them up on YouTube and do stuff, and I'm like, it looks kind of, it doesn't look very exciting. It's not quite as cool.
I mean, there is certainly a different style. The sound is different. The level of RPMs, just the way you're hitting the throttle. I mean, you're hitting the gas at just the right time. You're hitting the brakes at just the right time. That's the way I chalk it up. I mean, I really don't know, but it is certainly a different style, and it's just pretty cool to watch. It's some finesseful driving. A lot of it. It may be a lot with the car, maybe a lot with the motor, but you're hitting the gas and hitting the brakes at just the right time. So
It's interesting you say it. I don't get a chance to tell people about it very often, but it's such a rough sport that you would think that it's not a graceful sport from inside the car. And it's so weird that the two worlds collide in there so harsh because you're beating yourself up to where you can taste blood in your mouth from the smashes, right? And when you're in the rocks and you're trying to pick a line, it's like the most beautiful thing if you can slide sideways between two rocks and just miss them both by less than an inch and get into the next spot and hit it right in the right spot on the tire. And you're like, that is so hard to do and such a graceful art to be able to snake through and run the rocks that way correctly. That I really find like that's my passionate part where it's like such a bitchin' excursion when you do it right and it looks like somebody performed like a perfect pirouette into you know a pond of 3 feet around or something and you go, yeah, that was sick. And I don't think most people can even understand it from the outside because that A, to have a level of appreciation for it would be hard, and B, like to really see what just occurred would take a really good viewpoint and a vantage point, and that's a little bit difficult from the rocks. The drone game is really changing that because people are getting to see what we're doing from above and how tight it is. And so the filming of King of the Hammers, Steve Fisher's group and everybody that has helped so much. I know he's not really doing it right now, but he changed it. Like that whole thing, that's what's taken the sport to the next level. It's been a bitchin' sport that nobody knows about. Rock crawling's really badass at high speed, but nobody knows how badass it is. And desert racing is also badass, but until the coverage goes out there, most people don't really know what it is.
mm-hmm.
And the helicopters are cool, but they're limited, right? Like you can have 2 or 3 helicopters flying around in one general area, and if you don't know where to be, you miss the good coverage, or you miss the pass for the lead, or whatever that's going on in the desert because it's hard to track it all. When you've got these drones are all over the place following us up and down the trails. There's cable cameras going up and down Sledgehammer and stuff, and now you're getting these images that we've never seen before of what's actually happening. And you can see that ballet that's playing out in the rocks, and it's a masterpiece if you do it right.
Yeah, I had a pretty much a 15-minute live drone shot last year at Hammers. I can't remember which canyon it was. I can't remember the name of it, but it was amazing. We got a couple cool passes, and I mean, I'm really lucky because I get to see probably more of it than anybody,
I know.
and so that's why I have that perspective on your driving style, and our goal here with the Hammer Factor is for people to, for successful athletes and drivers and professionals to share their genius with the world, and somebody, if you ever want to get into car racing, watch Jason Scherer drive his car because it's cool. Um,
Uh, Thanks for saying that. I don't know if that's true, but thanks for saying that.
Shifting gears here, let's talk about the car. Give us just the basic stats. I don't want to get too much into the gear, but tell us about the weight, the travel, the horsepower. Just tell us
Sure.
about the car.
So I built the car in 2014. The lead fabricator, his name was Dan Trout. He helped me lay out everything as far as ergonomics, motor and transmission placement, and a lot of the chassis design. We did the front end independent suspension, trailing arms, rear suspension, link mounts, all that kind of stuff in SolidWorks with Dallas Lund. And he and I, went back and forth to get what we wanted. This was version 2 IFS car for me. And first one I built in 2011. And so this one was everything I learned from that one. And I took some risks on some things I thought would work better on this. It's around 4,400 pounds fully loaded with us in the car. Um, it has a crate LS7 with a Tilden camshaft, packed valve springs. It is dry sumped with an ARE dry sump, both to get the motor down lower and to solve some of the LS7 oiling issues that they had from the factory. And it made a little bit more power with the dry sump. It has a very mild camshaft. It's a very mild motor. I think factory is 505. I think with what we've done to it, it's about 550. I think because it's tuned well, it has Dan Trout built headers, a good intake, things like that. It's probably getting close to 575 horsepower, but it is a very mild motor. It has an extremely wide power band, so it makes good power from 2,500 RPMs all the way to 7,500 RPMs. So it's a really nice power plant for being user friendly. You can come out of a corner sideways in second gear at 3,000 RPMs, just like you can do it at 6,000 RPM. So it makes it for sort of a electric feel to the power plant. It's got 3.5 inch Fox bypasses on it, with 2.5 inch coilovers all around, and the coilovers have the DSC valves in them, and so the suspension is crazy. The front doesn't have as much travel as you think. It's 18 inches, which is very low by the standards of like a trophy truck and everything. The reason for that is basically the differentials. The differentials are so wide that our A-arms can only be so wide before we run out of space and the car would get too wide. And that matters because we do something that most of the trophy trucks and Pro 4s don't need to do, which is to lock and unlock the front differential 100%. And so we use an ARB air locker that completely locks up the differential. And that premise right there sort of sets up what you're going to build for a front end. That and wheel back spacing and scrub radius goals that you have are basic building blocks of how you're going to assemble that front end. It runs a transfer case that is connected all the time to the front and rear axles with no coupling. So it's 100% engagement of the front and rear all the time, or as maybe people would say, a 50-50 coupling. It has a standard, I shouldn't say standard, but it has a Diedenbeer or Reed Racing, I guess it is now, Turbo 400. So it's a 3-speed automatic transmission. It's not a very fancy transmission, but it is bulletproof. The guy who builds them for us is one of the highest expertise guys that I've ever met in the transmission industry, Greg Harrison, and he's built the transmissions for us for the last 5 years now. And I knock on wood every time I say it, but we've never had an issue because the dude is just so solid. And that comes off of a season where we had 13 transmission failures. So once we switched to this guy, we have been in good hands. And, the other part of it is nothing runs hot in the car. So we teamed up with C&R Racing out of Indianapolis, and they built us all these coolers for the car that are so much better than what the industry standards were. And on top of that, we added more cooling and everything. So our power steering fluid is cool, our motor oil is cool, our transmission fluid is cool, and I'm talking like 160-degree transmission
Oh
temps
wow.
and 120-degree power steering temps, and 180-degree engine temps in the heat of battle. And I think all that stuff has really helped us. I mean, literally stay relaxed in the car because you're not dealing with what, oh my gosh, we're heating up and everything's going crazy and it raises your blood pressure, to a big MagnaFlow muffler on the car that keeps it super quiet, and you don't hear the crazy noise of the exhaust that makes your blood pressure again go up and have that feeling in your head like you're being chased by the cops. But it does calm you down, and I think that all that stuff is really good about the car. The the travel in the rear feels like endless. Like we don't bottom out in the biggest holes. It's set up, and a lot of tuning went into that to where it just doesn't bottom out, but we're using all the available travel. And so you don't get a lot of zingers in the car. Um, it's still rough in some of those sections where you just, have one rock here and one rock there, and you're just, but in general, it's a pretty damn good ride. We took maybe two times we took big hits this year. One of them was like almost blackout lights. You hit so hard, you didn't see for a second, and you're like, wow, that was crazy. I almost went out. So when they're big, they're big. And that's a trip because that's something that I remember with the trophy truck is nothing hurts, nothing hurts, nothing hurts. And then all of a sudden the ones that hurt, it's like, holy hell. And this is turning into the same thing. It used to hurt all the time. Now it only hurts when it hurts really, really bad. So that's kind of how the suspension gets that good, that you're able to absorb the 95% of it, and you're only left with 5% that you have to bleed through.
And that's a burly five.
It is. It's
So
getting worse.
what's your car worth?
So they're all piles of metal, and they all have about the same drivetrains in them. And the pedigree of the car is worth something. And I know that sounds funny, but if you had the identical car and you had never finished in the top of the field in it, it wouldn't be as valuable as somebody who built a car that is winning races. And I think it's true of Eric Miller, Lauren Healy, Shannon Campbell. I mean, the Campbells. And I remember when Eric Miller sold his car for $225,000, and I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good price tag, although it's a pretty damn good car. Like, I don't know, they kind of go hand in hand with Eric's been able to drive that car up onto the top of the box, and certainly podiums at KOHs year after year. Shannon's done the same. And, what is a 5-year-old car that's basically, you know, nothing more than steel and, love? I don't know. Maybe 250, 300 something. I don't know. But I don't have any interest at this point in selling it unless I guess somebody came along with a big enough price tag, because it's such a good car for what it does. And I wouldn't want to build anything much different than it. And it's so dialed in to go build another one just to say you built another one at this point doesn't make a lot of sense. So somebody would have to really come in with a number that made a lot of sense, to get me to part from it. And it means something to me. That car has like an emotional connection too. So it'd be hard to give up.
No, I can see that. What about getting yourself ready? What about getting your body ready? Hammers is a 8-hour event. What are you doing to get, like, obviously you got a bunch of guys working on your car, you're getting everything ready, but what are you doing to get yourself ready?
I would say 2 months before the event, um, I go 5 days a week of CrossFit. Right now, I go every day I can, but some days you just can't go. I go 5 days a week, pretty hardcore, and then I mix in, you know, 30 tire changes, crap basically, to get ready for the race. You're doing a lot of prep in the shop and working on stuff and everything else. I I think the week before the race is also critical, and I think people forget that. And that might be the secret I'm giving away today, but I make sure that we're in bed every night by 10:30, 11. I get up early still. So I try to get up at, 6 at the latest, have a big breakfast, couple cups of coffee to kind of feel like 100%. And then I bang it out hard. Like I try to go do our pre-running, our prep on the car, our, short course stuff for practice on qualifying to make sure I know where everything is. And I push, 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 push. And I try to do as little bullshit standing around as I can because I feel like it's a real drag on you to stand around and talk to people all week. I love them, but I got to get my shit done and take care of our stuff. And it's a little selfish. But that's a priority. And I think everyone respects that when you're down there for a goal that, you're not just there to hang out. So I don't get any flack from it, but we get our pre-running done. We make sure we eat really well. And when I say we, I'm talking about my co-driver and myself. We're both, he's an amazing athlete, right? I think he got in the top 100 again this year for his age group at the CrossFit Open. He owns Dreamtown CrossFit in Truckee, and he's as hardcore as I am about having a goal and wanting to achieve it. And I think the two of us really work well because I don't think we go down there for fun.
Right.
I hate to say that.
No,
we tell ourselves that the race is fun, and it is, and it's only really fun if you succeeded. I mean, we have a good time and we go home and we go to a regular job on Monday and nothing's changed no matter what happened at the race, as long as you're still alive. And that's all that, it really does for you. But the rest of the time it's total diehard executing on a plan. And that's, I don't know. It's a good thing. And I do enjoy it, but it's a hardcore feeling of just going after that one thing and not, it's not a real laissez-faire kind of event. It's just go out there and execute on your mission. And if you fuck it up, it's on you.
Yeah.
So that pressure's hard. And so, we put ourselves in that position because we do like it and we feed off of it. But the same token, it's a tough place to get your head into. And, in the car, we have Camelback with water in it, and we have a Camelback with protein shake in it. And it's always tough for me because I have to start drinking those protein shakes the week before the race because they're all, anything that's all stabilized like that's going to be milk based. Mm-hmm. And since I don't drink dairy, right, I got to drink dairy that whole 10 days leading up to it so I don't get sick during the race. And then, we go through that race. Most of the time it's, 50, 60 degrees during the day at the Hammers. This year when we left the starting line, it was 27. So you do 27 degrees out and 120 miles an hour for your wind factor. No windshield in there, right? And you're freaking freezing. I mean, literally you're freezing. Like you're having trouble getting your limbs to function at full tilt, right? When you're trying to turn your hands as fast as you can and they're not moving, you're like, whoa. So, you this year we didn't drink anything. I mean, it's terrible, but 6.5 hours, we took 2 sips of water and I never drank the Camelback with protein in it, which kind of said a lot to me because I didn't feel faded from it. It shows you're hydrated, your body's in good shape, you're physically able to handle that. And, that period of, a 6.5 hour run doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of people, but, to put out that much physical exertion and basically be, fasting the whole time for that and to be okay after that was cool. What was interesting was we finished the race. I did autographs for about 2 hours. And somewhere in that 2-hour session, I started to hit a wall and I crashed. And it was like, oh God, I got to go eat something. I literally couldn't hold the pen to sign any more autographs. I'm like, all right, I got to eat. And so we had to take off and go back to the motorhome and eat something. But that's basically it for me. That's how I take care of myself. I try not to, do anything too much. And definitely I think the key is getting enough rest. I think that's been hard to do down there. There's people that come and bang on my door at 11:30 at night because they want to hang out and see you because they haven't seen you since last year when they banged on your door at 11:30 at night. And you're like, you want to get up and go hang out with them, but you got to stay in bed and get some sleep. So it's a little tricky.
Through all your racing, what's been the pinnacle? What stands out as your best moment?
It's hard. There's two of them, and the two of them are the 2018 King of the Hammers. The 2018 King of the Hammers was redemption from 10 more attempts at winning it since the fluke thing that everyone kind of could say about 2009, where some guy that didn't, you know, really necessarily have any desert racing experience goes out and wins the 2009 King of the Hammers. And, the guy wasn't named Shannon Campbell. So it was like, is it just a fluke or can anyone do it? So to go do it in 2018 to me was a bit of redemption, like kind of justified all the effort. And it felt really good to be able to say we did it. And we had a tough run the year before there where we may have made a wrong call on letting the race play out the way it did. So 2018 had a redemption factor that, most people don't have any idea about, but for us, it meant something because we knew we could do it and it was bitching to be able to go prove it. And the second one, the only reason it's not my number one is because my family wasn't there to enjoy it with me. My father-in-law was, and my brother from another mother, Adam, was there, but and Oli and Jeff Mello and a lot of my buddies were there. But when we went after last year's Triple Crown event, and it was King of the Hammers for the rock crawling event, it was the Mint 400 for the desert race, which Adam McGow, my crew chief, rode with me in, and then going to Crandon, Wisconsin for the Big House short course race in the fall, and saying, okay, I've always wanted to win a race at Crandon, but like I'm a rock donkey. There's no way we're going to go run a short course race. And then having them open it up to a class for 4,400 cars where we could race against each other. And I remember showing up there. We had the points lead, but not by a lot, over Paul Horschel. And I followed Casey Curry on the opening laps of practice, and he was pulling away from me by so much that I said, holy shit, I'm never going to be able to, catch these guys. And, this track is tricky and the car feels like it's loose and I'm all over the place and, blah, blah, blah. And then to reel it in, figure out the car setup by working on it in the pits and changing a bunch of stuff until I said, okay, this is what I wanted. And I remember the guys kind of looking at me like, dude, you're driving it. You got to tell us what to do. And I was like, I know, but I'm not sure what to do. But I think we got to do this, 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 and this. And they're like, it's a lot of stuff. Are you sure? And I was like, yep. And we went out there. We won the Friday night race, which wasn't really the championship, a Triple Crown one. I didn't really know that at the time, but the Friday night race didn't mean anything other than $5,000, which was cool. But it was a 45-minute heat race or something, a 45-minute race. And it was super intense between Paul and I. And I think we both thought it was for points, but whatever. The Sunday race, which was like, 50,000 fans, grandstands looked like, they were jumping up and down when you went through turn one, and we lined up on that starting line with a land rush start and to pull the whole shot going into the first corner and never lifting all the way down the front thing. And like kind of looking into my side out the side window when I was sideways and seeing the whole field behind me. And I was like, holy shit, we're leading this thing. And then to lead it all the way to the checkers was, dude, I don't know. It was crazy. We got done with that lap and I almost didn't want to stop. Like I just wanted to keep running laps, I was like, we did it. And so we won the Triple Crown and we won King of the Hammers and we won the Crandon race all like in 1 year. And I was like, dude, that was probably the best that like I'll ever get. You know what I mean? In one season. Cause I don't think that there'll ever be so much pressure on trying to win an overall thing. I mean, it's, the championships and Ultra 4 are kind of regional races and stuff. And you kind of have to have some luck on your side and here and there. And, it all plays out differently, but that was the one that meant, I guess it is the most pinnacle one in my career. It's just that it's shitty that my family couldn't have been there because it was like the first week of school So they had to be there. They're not registered and all that stuff. So I wish they were there. But other than that, that was awesome.
Sick. What about your
Yeah.
lowest moment? What's at the bottom?
Um, you know, people won't get this, I guess, unless they're an athlete or they've tried something and failed. And I know a lot of your fans that watch the show are, so maybe they'll get this. But we used to drive home from those events that we didn't do well in, and I would go over in my head what went wrong and what didn't work out over and over and over again, to where a drive from New Mexico to Northern California would feel like it took 5 minutes, and I would just beat myself up um, so badly. I mean, to the point where you're like, holy crap, dude! Like, I got to get it together, because you can actually like spiral, or you're like, this isn't healthy to keep beating yourself up. And so then I tried to take away from that what I need to do to get better, and then you know learn from those things. But there was quite a few of those where you were really hard on yourself, and very frustrating. Championships that we lost, two super crawls in a row that we felt like we got snaked out from underneath us by bad luck or bad circumstances, that you want to try to figure out how you can resolve them, because ultimately the only way that you lose them is something that you did wrong. You can't blame everybody else for them. And so you start taking it to like, okay, what do I have to do to be better about this? I do think that, you know, people will never understand how hard I am on myself. Like, we went up and had a bad qualifying run at Reno last year. I overshot the first corner. So then I tried to make it up in the second corner and biked it up on two wheels, tried to make it up in the third corner, took the wrong line, missed the braking zone in the fourth corner, and was so pissed off by the end of it, I hit the rock pile and bounced through it sideways, and it looked like some badass thing. And, I think it had 250,000 views the first night on Facebook because it was so crazy looking, but I was so freaking pissed at myself. I almost punched the airbag out of the steering wheel of my truck on the drive home. I mean, I was literally trying to rip the steering wheel off my truck because I was so freaking pissed. And we were third, and it was because I was pissed at myself for overshooting the first corner and then not getting my head back in the game. And I don't think people have any idea that I'm that mental about that kind of stuff, because I want to run a clean line. So when you do see me all kicked all over the place, I'm actually pissed at myself for not being clean. And it helped me. This is the thing. This is the takeaway that I think is so important, is it helped me at King of the Hammers 4 months later, 5 months later, because when I went out there for that qualifying lap, I knew exactly what had to happen and what didn't have to happen, and what happens when something goes wrong, about sticking to your game plan, because it had just been reinforced in my brain so hard from having the failure. So those types of little things that most people might not think are a big deal, or, maybe people would be happy with a third place in qualifying and they could walk away from that and not beat themselves to death. I couldn't even fricking sleep that night. The anger didn't really leave me. Now the race didn't go our way at all, but that had nothing to do with it. Like the race, we had some circumstances with red flags. I don't get upset at all when, like, a course marker red flags the race, and then you get put in the wrong starting spot, and you start in 23rd when you're supposed to be in 13th, and you're like, I'm not going to argue about it, and I'm not upset about that. Those actually are out of your control, from race offs making mistakes. That stuff doesn't bother me at all. It's nothing. But when you do something wrong, that's when I'm pissed about it.
When you're in that spiral, when you're like you talk about, it's you can really get yourself down. What do you do specifically to get out of it? Like, what advice would you offer? I mean, because a lot of our listeners out there, I'm sure, are trying to compete in something, trying to do their personal best or to win something, like, and then you don't do it, puts you in that rut. Like, how do you get out of it?
Okay, so I figured something out. There's a bunch of bullshit in advertising that says give it your 110%. There is actually no 110%. You only have 100%. So it's false advertising to believe that there's more than 100% to be given. As soon as you learn that, you can only give it your best going into every corner. You can only give it your best going into every jump. You can only do your best. And you have to stay within that. because there is no heroism that starts at above 100%. It's only mistakes and it's only risk. And so you don't get more out of a corner than the perfect corner. And the perfect corner is the 100%. So trying to make up for what you've screwed up is impossible. Once you've burned a corner, once you've biked it up and had to save it, you don't get that time back somewhere else. And that's the biggest takeaway. And don't let yourself become such a head case with your helmet on that you forget that, because it doesn't come back. It's just a matter of eliminating the rest of the mistakes. And unfortunately, I think that's what racing really is, or a perfect lap really is. It's not a perfect lap. It's an elimination of all possible mistakes. And I think if you look at it that way, you have a better chance of succeeding.
Interesting. I like that. There is no 110%. Just keep it throttled at 100, because everything after that's just mistakes and unnecessary risk. Last question here. What if someone wanted to get into Ultra 4 racing, someone had an old four-wheel drive around or whatever, how would you recommend them going about getting in a race? How do you do it?
Okay, so that's a great question. I think right now there are quite a few older 4400 cars for sale. There are also quite a few of the 45, 4800. I really like the old Legends cars that Dave Cole built, because I feel like they were Jimmy's chassis. The chassis are readily available if you ever hurt one. They're simple crate motor programs with Spider Tracks housings and then Atlas transfer cases, Fox shocks. I mean, they're basic parts and they run really good. So I think those cars are probably the most bang for the buck to go out there and have a good time. But if you had something, if you wanted to go build something on your own because you have something, like you kind of asked in your question, I think that going to the hammers is the most critical point. Just go first. Sounds funny to say it. Go down there first and understand the area and the terrain before you start coming up with ideas on how to build your car and you haven't exactly seen what you're going to get yourself into. Try to team up with people that are going down there to practice. Try to team up with maybe the shock company you're going to use and see when they're going to be down there testing, and see if you can, hop in with one of the guys that's doing a shock test and get a ride. Go walk the trails. My co-driver and I walk trails. Walking trails shows you exactly where everything is. And so, go out there, take the time to do it. And when you start building your car, you'll have a much better idea of what you're going after, like what the goal is, instead of, ending up there with something that doesn't necessarily need to be there. There's a lot of theories on what's working, but if you look at the last 7 or 8 years, it's all the same guys in the same kind of cars. And so, I don't know that you need to go build a helicopter to go compete in the hammers right now. Like that does, hovers
Right.
across rocks. Go build a car just like everybody else has been building right now and go out there and outdrive them, because it's now turned into a driving race, not so much a technology race, that's stabilized on that front with, quality parts that aren't failing. So yeah, that's what I would just suggest, is get down there and go check it out, and then figure out what you want to do exactly.
Well, what's next for you, Jason? What's on your schedule?
You know what? I leave Saturday, so it's Thursday morning here. I got a couple of days here until I leave for Baja. I'm going to Trail of Missions with Cameron Steele and his crew of Desert Assassins, and then all of our good friends from, Cody Wagner to Kurt Leduc to everybody that's going down there. We're 21 trucks, I think, and we're going to hit every mission in Baja,
Nice.
down to Loreto, and see some great stuff. And the coolest part about this trip, taking both my kids and my wife, and we're going to spend, 10 days in Mexico together. And a lot of people wouldn't do it. A lot of people are, it's dangerous, it's scary, you're going to take your kids and all that kind of stuff. And I'm so excited to show them, how other people live and the beauty of Baja, and give them a little appreciation for the bubble that they grow up in every day, and what they take for granted because they don't know any better. So, I'm excited for that. And, I love the people down there. I think it's such a wonderful way of life and a wonderful group of people, and their hospitability and their sweetness and their demeanor and the way that they live off the land and the things that they do. It's just, I really have an appreciation for the people that live there, the culture, the lifestyle, and I think it's the most beautiful place I've ever been. Sans maybe Lake Tahoe or something. Like I just, it's just so beautiful to be in that element. And so I'm excited to share it with my kids. They've never seen anything but maybe Cabo or something, so they're going to get to go see the real Baja.
Super rad. Well, where can our listeners follow you? Are you a Instagrammer or Facebooker, or where can people follow you?
I'm an Instagrammer. I do better with pictures than typing. So follow me at Jason Scherer 76. So it's Scherer 76. So yeah, check me out there. And then I'm gonna do a couple of things on YouTube this year. So I've got a YouTube channel that my daughter started for me because that's how that works. So we're gonna do some blogging because we've got a couple of cool builds coming up with things that we're doing, and she's gonna help me document the trip a little bit for Trail Missions. So we're gonna get started on it down there, and yeah, I'll share all that on the Instagram page so you guys can find the links to all the YouTube stuff.
Well, this has been a rad interview. Value bombs galore out there, man. Congratulations on hammers this year. Enjoy your trip, and man, I hope our paths cross soon.
Absolutely, for sure at Hammers next year. I'll see you down there filming.
All
Thanks
right.
for everything. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
All right, take care.